Hey everybody, I'm Eric from Corter Leather, and in this video I'm going to show you how to assemble my signature snap wallet kit from Buckleguy. When we open the tube, we're going to be met with our tools and materials bag. This bag will have everything that you need besides a pair of scissors to make this wallet. You're going to get thread, you're going to get a piece of canvas to burnish if you want, that's optional. You're going to get 2 needles because we're going to be doing a saddle stitch, which is a 2-needle stitch. And you're going to get a piece of sandpaper and wax to finish your edges when you're done. You're also going to get all the leather you need pre-cut and pre-punched. And all the hardware installed. Now, if you'd like a PDF version of these instructions, you can scan that code, or you can head to Buckleguy's website, and there's a nice download there that'll walk you through how to make everything. So additionally, you can add on thread snippers and a burnishing tool. You don't need these if you have scissors at home, but they're nice to have, especially these little thread snippers. So the kit's gonna come with an exterior shell, an interior shell, 2 outer pockets, and 4 inner T pockets. So it's going to have 6 card slots and 1 bill slot. The first thing we need to do is we need to burnish all of the interior edges that we're not going to be able to reach once this is all sewn together. On this wallet, it's basically just all the tops of the cards. So easy peasy, you can even gang them up together. So you can take all 4 of these T pockets and just burnish them all at the same time to save yourself some time. If you don't know how to burnish, this is how you go about it. If you want to get a little fancy in either a kit or any leather piece you're making, you can burnish the edges. Now, I've sanded these edges down. You can go down to 220 grit, 300 grit, 400 grit, 600 grit. You can make a mirror edge if you'd like. I'm just using water here. You need some sort of lubricant. You can use gum trag, you can use toconol, you can use whatever you'd like to use. But we're gonna get this, we're almost casing it. So we want it damp, but not totally soaking wet. And when you're using water in your finger, it takes a minute to get there. But what this is gonna do is we're gonna use the canvas that's provided in the kit after we've sanded, and we're gonna basically sand again, but with the canvas. And what we're doing is we're sealing the edge of our leather by bringing the oils that are inside of the leather up to the top. And as you can see with the change of color, that's going to prevent any moisture from getting into the wallet. Now, this will happen on its own. It's lovingly referred to as a pocket burnish if you don't burnish and just let your pocket do it. But we're using canvas. We're basically just emulating putting your wallet in, taking it out, putting it in, taking it out. That's all, not all burnishing is, but when you burnish with canvas, that's kind of what you're emulating. But the result is actually a higher quality product because this prevents moisture from getting into your layers of leather. Now, it is not necessary. Pieces will naturally burnish over time. It takes about 6 months. And your wallet's not going to rot away if you don't want to do it. But it's how I like to finish my leather wallets, and it gives your piece a nice professional look. And so that's why a lot of people do it. And if you want to give it a try on the kit, you get your canvas. You also get the option to get an actual slicker. Now the slicker is very similar to using canvas. I'm going to put a little extra water on here. The slicker you would use more with gum trag or toconol. But we're going to do the same thing with a wood slicker. And as you can see, we're darkening those fibers a little bit more. It's a little steadier to use. But really the rule that I like to stick to is if you're using water, I go canvas. If you're using gum trag or toconol or some sort of acrylic resin based edge finish, go with the slicker, which you can add on to any kit. So the way this kit is laid out, you're going to have 2 T pockets on either side. Now a T pocket is a pocket that slots into the pocket above and or below it. So we're gonna make 2 pocket banks on this wallet. One on the left, one on the right, and they're gonna look like that. And they're gonna go on this piece and on this piece. Now these holes in the middle here correspond with the holes on the bottom of our T-pockets. Those holes are there so that when you put a credit card in, it doesn't slide all the way down and you lose it and you have to fish it out. So the first thing we need to do before we get into the interior of this wallet at all is to actually sew the exterior of our bifold, because from somewhere in here, you can decide, to about here, this is a stitch that's going to provide strength as the wallet opens and closes and prevent stretching over the years. Because we're using a synthetic thread, the wallet itself will have a tendency to stretch and deform, but if we sew it, that'll prevent it from happening. So I'm going to show you guys how to stitch this, and then we'll get into assembling the interior. There are a few ways to do a saddle stitch. The way that I was taught is it's called a leapfrog stitch, and it's less of a traditional French saddle stitch, more of an Americana saddle stitch. And a lot of you guys out there that do other fiber arts and crafts are going to see this as 2 running stitches running parallel and concurrently. However, we only use 1 piece of thread with our 2 needles. To thread the needle, you're going to obviously put the thread through the eye of the needle. Now we're using 0.8 millimeter bits of thread here, so this is thick thread. It might take you a couple times. It helps sometimes to cut the thread at an angle. Then I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go about 1 inch in, and I'm going to stab it through the thread. Now you can do this once, you can do it twice, you can do it 3 times would be excessive, but we'll do it twice. And that's going to lock that needle onto that thread. It's going nowhere. I've done it on the other side too. Now we're ready to start our saddle stitch. To start a saddle stitch, what I like to do is I put one needle into one hole and the next needle into the next hole. I pull both of them out and I make sure that both of my needles are even. That lets me know that both the lengths of thread are even. I'm going to drop the front thread. I'm going to take the middle finger of my non-dominant hand and hold it. A lot of the way that this saddle stitching method works relies on you keeping tension by wrapping the front thread over your finger, over your pointer finger, and under your middle finger. I'm going to take my back needle. I'm going to go into the hole that already has the thread through it. I'm going to pull. Then, with my free hand, I'm going to pull this while keeping tension on my backhand. And that's it. You're going to go front to back, front to back, front to back. So now the back thread is the front thread. I'm going to drop this thread, drop this thread. I'm going to pick up the back thread with my dominant hand. I'm going to grab the front thread with the middle finger of my non-dominant hand. And then we're back right where we started. I'm keeping tension with my non-dominant hand, and I'm advancing the stitch by putting, I'm showing y'all so I can't see it, but by putting the needle into the hole that already has our front stitch on it. And that is how I saddle stitch. It's generally called a leapfrog stitch. But what we're doing here is we're creating 2 stitches at the same time. What that means is that should this stitch break, one of these stitches, should one of these stitches break, we still have a whole other stitch line that's going to keep this piece together. And that's how you saddle stitch. First thing we're going to do is we are going to get the top of our exterior shell stitched. Now, you have options here. You can stitch from here, and that will give you a very classic American feeling bifold that opens pretty tightly, right? Or the Japanese way of doing it is you can stitch down to here, which means once the wallet is put together, it will open wider, making the bills and whatever you keep in here a lot more easy to access. I have traditionally always sewn all the way down to where the curve ends. So I'm gonna start right after the curve here on the side that doesn't have the snap, and I'm gonna go all the way down to right about where the curve ends. Now you have to realize this is a folk art. This is not a science. So if you start stitching one stitch up or down from where I'm stitching, or you wanna stitch over here and close up this side, that is totally fine. The wallet is gonna function basically the same. I just prefer to stitch it the other way because it is easier to access your cash or whatever you put in there. And just because I'm kind of a purist, I learned a lot from Japanese leather workers, and that's how they do it. So that's how I do it. Since we only have one piece of leather here, we're going to measure out 4 pretty accurate lengths of thread. And that should get us enough thread to do this. I am using a spool of thread because I would suggest picking up a spool of thread as extra. You always have enough thread when you buy a kit, but if you're learning how to leatherwork, or if you're learning how to do leatherwork, one of the biggest stresses, even when I have kits, is if I mess up, what happens if I run out of thread? So Buckleguy gives you enough thread to, I think, make plenty of mistakes, but it is nice to just spend the extra $3 or $4 and get, a tiny spool of whatever matching thread you choose. Now, that also brings me to the point, with all of these kits, you can pick your leather, you can pick your thread color. I don't think you can pick your hardware color, but it does come pre-installed, so you don't need the hardware setting tools to install it. But I'm pretty sure it only comes in brass. However, all of your leather colors look great with brass, so that's not really an issue. So I'm gonna load these needles up and get to sewing the top of this. And this is actually a good kit. Well, it looks complicated, but it's a nice kit to start with if you haven't done any leatherwork before, because the first step is just a simple saddle stitch. So you can really get to know the process before you start doing things like pockets and inner shells and outer shells that are a ½ inch difference so that you can close them and all that kind of stuff. And that sounds complicated, but it's not. I'm gonna walk you through it in this video. But we're gonna go and we're gonna saddle stitch the top of this to prevent the stretching in the future. And I am going to sew to this hole right here, and then I'm gonna backstitch. But I'm gonna spare you watching me sew for 10 minutes, and I'll come back when I'm back stitching, and then we'll start assembling the interior. I have our shell all sewn up, and you can see here, this is how far I like to sew. I kind of try to follow this line, and you can go here, you can go here, you can go here, you can go up here if you want. It doesn't really make a difference. It's not going to affect the strength. The only thing it's going to affect is how easy it is to get bills in and out of the wallet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to backstitch this. And now this backstitch is kind of interesting because it's usually hidden by the inside layers, but every time you open the wallet to get cash out, you're going to see it. So I'm going to want to be a little bit careful with my lighter when I seal up this thread, because I don't really want any dark marks. And if you've watched any of the other tutorials for these kits, I am not good at not burning leather. So any cutting tool that you have will work. We're going to cut our thread, use a lighter, and just gently kind of kiss that down. But if you're in the position, a lot of the times we'll have, in all leatherwork, but in the kit specifically, a lot of the times you're kind of stuck like trying to shove a lighter in, and that's just part of leatherwork. But we barely have anything put together. So you can easily get in there and melt it without risking any burning. Just go really slow, and remember that the top of the flame is cooler than the bottom of the flame, and then smush it down. And there we go. So with that, I'm going to take my hammer. I'm going to tap down all these stitches. Now you can do this with any hammer. Just make sure that the face is rounded. You don't have any hard edges because you can mark the leather up. And what that does is it closes up the holes a little bit. It flattens the thread so that there's less chance of abrasion over time, causing the thread to tear or rip or do any bad stuff like that. So we're done, believe it or not, with the front of our wallet for now, the front shell. Now we have to move on to assembling the interior. Now the interior, as you know, has 2 in pockets and then 4 of pretty much the exact same T pockets. We're going to have 2 on either side. What we're going to do first is we're going to sew all of these in on the bottoms so that when this is all together and we put a credit card in, the credit card doesn't slide all the way out or all the way to the bottom. The credit card sits neatly here where you can grab it. And to do that, I'm basically just going to do another saddle stitch. So if you want to follow along with me or do it yourself, we're going to cut. We're going to grab fresh needles, not because we need to, but because the other ones aren't unthreaded yet, and I forgot to unthread them before we started filming this clip. And once we thread these and get started, I'm not going to make you watch me go through all 4. They're all the same. The nice thing about this kit is that you get a lot of practice with short saddle stitch runs. So if you want to practice your saddle stitching, short of just punching runs of stitches and sewing them, which is how I learned that's how I perfected my saddle stitch technique that I use today. This is a cool kit to use because at the end, you have a gift or a product to sell or, a product to use yourself. So you can do this 2 ways. Or 3 ways actually. You can hold on to it and just simply stick your needles in the holes. You can go from left to right or right to left, depends on what your dominant hand is. And you can just hold on to the pocket and sew it. The other way you can do it is you can add a little bit of glue along this seam. The third way you can do it is we can take some alligator clips. I like the small ones. And you can line everything up. And then you want to be careful about this because an alligator clip is strong enough to dent the leather. Not that bad, but I always try to just put my alligator clip right on the stitch holes because I know that I'm already going to be sewing that. So that's going to be hidden by the stitch. And if we do that on both sides, and I like to tuck these in because thread will get caught on them. Now we have a totally secure pocket that we can focus just on the stitching. So I'm just going to go through, I'm going to stitch it and back stitch it. And I'm going to do that after I'm done with this one. Once this is totally sewn, I'll grab another one. I'll put it so it lines up with this line and I'll stitch that. And I'm going to do that 4 times, come back, and we'll keep on going. So these are all 4 of our pockets and they're all sewn in. See? And I have the last one is back stitched. I'm just going to make a little clip just like we always do. And it's always good to leave about a 1/16 of an inch. You don't need to leave a lot. Burn that down, melt it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hammer, and you can use any hammer that's kind of rounded over. Actually, it doesn't really matter because you're never going to see this leather because it's being covered by this pocket. But I would suggest getting in the habit of using the right hammer just from the get-go. We're going to hammer down these stitches pretty aggressively because this is going to go over top of this, and we don't want to see, we want to minimize the amount of this pocket that we see under this pocket. And then for the next one, we're just going to fold this one up. And remember too, a lot of people get a little weird around bending leather like this, it can handle it. Don't worry about if you have to bend it, squish it, do whatever. Now comes the part where you get to make some decisions. You've decided at this point already, hopefully, how far down you've sewn your outside shell. The way this wallet goes together is that this piece goes on the inside. Now you're going to notice that the inside shell, which we're going to call this big piece, is about a 1/2 inch shorter than the outside shell. And that's because when we close the wallet, obviously, this inside shell is going to push out. So if we made them the same size, the wallet wouldn't close. So you need to decide first how far down you're going to sew. Once you've done that and you actually sew, you're going to take your interior piece, you're going to lay your final card slot over it, and you're going to make note of where you stop sewing there so that you can start sewing on the hole there. And the way that I do that is I take one of my needles and I make a little line between the two holes that's going to be hidden with thread. And I know to start sewing right there. Now I'm going to do this all in one pass, so I need to know where to stop sewing as well. So we're going to sew this, and then over here, I know to stop here. This is the hole I'm going to stop at. Now we're not sewing this to this yet. All we're doing is partially sewing these bottom pockets on, because when we complete these stitch lines, those are also going to complete these stitch lines, and our wallet will pretty much be done besides burnishing. So let's get to stitching this one, and I know where to start stitching because I made my mark right there. All right, so I have the top all the way sewn all the way around in one go. Now, you can burnish the top of this if you want. It's going to be in the inside of the wallet. In this tutorial, we're just going to go bare bones and we're going to leave it unburnished. I'll show you what one burnished side looks like at the end. The first step in putting the whole wallet together, because now it's time to install the interior to the exterior, is to take the hole that we sew. So I made the decision to sew all the way down past the flap. I'm going to put one needle through there, and then I'm going to put one needle through the interior shell where I matched up my stitching, and we're going to go through, and this is where we finish sewing this pocket into the wallet, but it's also where we basically join both pieces of the wallet together and the wallet becomes a wallet. So I'm going to sew down around here to the beginning of this pocket on the opposite side. Now you're going to notice the holes on the exterior stop here. So once I get here, I'm going to lift this up and I'm only going to be sewing this center part, right? And that is, again, just to prevent it from stretching. When I come back, I'm going to show you how we're going to use either our body or some alligator clips to make up for the discrepancy in size of the inner and outer shell and get the rest of the wallet sewn up. So as you can see, I've sewn down and around, and that stitch continues onto this side. Now, what you're going to do on the inside is basically when the holes stop on the outside, you transfer over and just sew on the inside. Now we have to sew the other side. So as you can see, we have a little less than a 1/2 inch discrepancy here. And that is so when we close the wallet, you can see everything lines up because we have all of these layers. Now, what I do, because I enjoy my burritos, is I just put it up against my belly and I hold it like this and I sew. If you stay away from the burritos, what you can do is you can take an alligator clip and you can just put it like that. But remember to keep the alligator clip in the line of the stitching so that if any marks are made, the stitching hides it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start at the top we're going to do a double stitch because this is where people are going to open and close this wallet from the most. And when I say double stitch, I mean we're just looping around twice. That's it. And now you can glue this too. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but you can glue this all down. I'm just kind of showing you straight out of the kit how you put it together. Now we're going to just readjust things like that. So we're perfectly even here. See? And we're going to sew around and down, and then we're going to be done. So we've sewn down and over, and you'll see there's no stitches, or there's no thread here or here, but I haven't finished the stitch yet. And that's because on this side, we're able to tuck the stitching inside the bill slot. So with the optional snippers, which make it very easy to get to these threads, I'm going to get that one. I'm going to get that one. So we're back stitched and snipped. This is a little bit dangerous, so be careful. We're going to take the lighter and we're just going to melt it just a little tiny bit and smush it. The wallet will actually do the rest of the work. Now, this is a finished wallet. You can use this for 10 years and you're going to be good to go. What you can do is go an extra step and burnish. Now, this is actually a very close replica of the first wallet that I ever made in leather. And it was kind of a blend of Casey's and Red Moon, which are two Japanese brands. So it's really special to me that Buckleguy brought this as a kit to the market, because now anyone can make it at any level and they can enjoy that same, the same craft and the same culture of Japanese leathercraft as I did 16 years ago. So we can see on the sides here, you have burnished and unburnished on this piece, and then a nice glove slap. And remember, you get to pick color your leather and your thread. So if you want to do it in Horween, if you want to do it in a black thread or whatever, you absolutely can. It's all on the website. So thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see the kits that you guys make, and enjoy the kits.